I sat here because being on the other end is kind of a pain in the butt when you're looking at
It is, you have to swing around.
the whole table. Like Lyle is the tiniest person in the world when you're on the Zoom meeting,
That's why I like to sit
and it's
down.
kind of hard to hear
Yeah.
too. That's why you guys sit down there. Well, let's call the meeting to order and stand for the pledge, please. And then the meeting is live. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so our JCIDA Loan Review Committee hearing for October 27th, 2021 is called to order. We've done the pledge. We had a couple matters on our agenda. One will be deferred. We'll get to that in a moment. But Standard Machine and Fabrication, Justin, you here? Hello again.
Hello, good morning.
Poirier, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, make sure I pronounced it correctly. So Justin formed a new company. He came before our committee and the board approved a prior micro enterprise loan. And then you have the packet. There was some additional equipment that was required for his business to be efficient and ultimately profitable. And he's come back for an additional micro enterprise loan. When I personally analyze this, I kind of combine the two together because when you look at this one on its own, it looks a little peculiar, but when you put them together, the numbers make better sense. But nevertheless, it's still the same business. We already approved a $20,000 and there's an additional $20,000 to buy some equipment with an additional personal cash infusion. I guess, Justin, if you wanted to just kind of add to whatever I fumbled over or didn't cover well enough.
No, that's fine. What ended up happening ultimately was the new location doesn't have natural gas and it also doesn't have three-phase power. So one of the big washers I have currently, I'm going to have to get something different that doesn't require natural gas. And then the compressor is something I also had to have temporarily until the build to order compressor that I actually need to operate completely will be built, and that will be here in December. So that smaller compressor is going to get me by until then, but it's going to allow me to operate minimally until I can get the other one.
Okay.
You've already got that one on order then?
Yes, that one will actually be here today.
Okay.
Yeah, that one will be here today. And then the three-phase power grid is way behind COVID materials. They're talking 16 to 18 weeks.
Okay.
So I actually got with Pat over at Pearson and Timmerman right over on Water Street, and they got me a rotating phase inverter to get me up and going for now, which was a much cheaper option. And if I can operate efficiently with that, I'm not even gonna have grid bring me the power because it's got awful expensive.
I bet.
Yeah, it's gonna be like 15 grand just to get the power there. So if I can get by with the rotating phase inverter efficiently and I'm not having issues, I'm just gonna run with that.
All right. So
That's also ordered and will be here today too from Pearson and Timmerman.
I've never heard the term leaks come out of National
I've
Grid.
never heard rotating phase inverters. That kind of like a large version of what you use in your car to.
Well, no. So, and I'm not super. I'm pretty good with electrical stuff, but that's way above me. So I kind of talked to Pat over at Pearson and Timmerman a little bit just to get an explanation on it. And I guess they actually install a couple of three-phase motors in a system in a circuit, and they don't run anything, but they start them with single-phase power, and then the third leg of that three-phase actually acts as a generator and actually generates power for the rest of what it needs.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, it's really, I don't understand it yet either, but I'm hoping that once I see it operating and how it works, I can get a better understanding of it. Kind of one of those hands-on, eyes-on kind of people, but it's a little difficult to understand.
all right. So you described, so you need two they were pretty expensive pieces of equipment by
Yes,
the
yes.
looks of them. The inverter was not cheap, nor was the compressor. So when you combine the two projects together, you're putting in, it was $53,942 of cash. And total micro enterprise loans would be 40, which you're looking for 20 today. And then you had a mortgage through, was it Watertown Savings? Yeah, Watertown
Correct.
Savings at 230. So the total project was 323,492. Again, the majority of that, 300 of it, we had approved prior. So today is 23,492 with a micro enterprise request of 20,000, and personal cash infusion of $34.92. And the only reason I'm combining them is it doesn't really come close to meeting thresholds of
Right.
50% of project value for just today. So you have to, my opinion, you have to look at these combined. to
Well, they're
see
gonna be combined for amortization purposes anyway.
Yeah, I just meant that like what we have in front of us, just based on the numbers, don't,
Yeah, that's why we put the original one.
yeah, it was
in there.
buried back here, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, John or Dave?
So how's
or anybody
business
else?
been, Justin, since you started?
So I have not moved to the new location yet, so we're currently operating out of the Mill Street location until the end of the month, and we're still busy. We're still taking in work every day. He's over there screaming busy. He's all by himself, but he's still getting it done.
Robert, Paul, anything you have to offer?
I'll move it to the board.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move this, you know the drill. This will go in front of, I think it was 4th of November, is it next board hearing?
Next Thursday. Tomorrow.
Yeah, Thursday, 4th. After election day. So we'll move that to the full board and then they're the only ones that can take action. So
Okay.
thanks for coming and explaining a little bit.
Thanks for
This
having me.
makes
I
the business
appreciate it.
even more successful.
If there's any other questions you guys have, feel free to call me or email me, or I can come back. Whatever you guys gotta have.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank
You guys have a good day.
Justin, man,
Yes,
you have a machinist working for you?
they do. Yes, Mark Trudeau. He's actually the gentleman that has been running that shop for the last 20 years all by
Yeah,
himself.
always a friend of my son's. As a matter of fact, I think he saw him last night at college. But, is one machinist going to be adequate?
So he's going to train me, and I'm going to work beside him for the next however many years until he gets sick of me. And then we're actually going to try to bring in another person and get them trained as well, because I mean, Mark,
A tough market.
it is. It's tough work, but there's not a lot of people doing it, and there's still quite a bit of demand for it, especially around here in farm communities. There's a lot of farm stuff that needs to be done, and there's nobody else
There's
to do it.
shortage of parts now. that's it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of things we're rebuilding or fixing because we can't get anything new. So,
Right.
all right.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, Bob. Have a good day.
Thank you all. So the fourth matter was under unfinished
Yeah.
business. We did not receive any
Yeah.
application that committee can even act upon, but there was a request, Dave, if you want to.
Yeah, so we did get a request, and Justin filling here from Forefront, its attorney last week, what was it, Wednesday or Thursday? I guess it was. And they're looking at first I thought it sounded to me, Justin, didn't do that, like, sound like they already sold the project. But then as we got into it, sounds like the project is waiting to be sold once they execute the pilot. So we were looking for an amended application, some questions back and forth, long story short. We didn't get anything Friday or by Monday morning. There's some questions yesterday. And I'll just turn over to you to kind of summarize where we're at, whatever you think is appropriate at this point in time. So,
Oh, sure.
and how we should proceed.
The IDA went through the standard process of accepting the application from Forefront on behalf of the entity, had the hearing and conducted the approval, I think, April or May of this year. And we got the sense that Forefront wanted to proceed to a closing pretty quickly. We prepared the documents and got those circulated, I think, in May or June. And since that time, we've been kind of, monthly kind of poking at them and asking, where are we? Do you have any comments to the documents? And they said that yes, they're forthcoming. For a little bit more prodding in the last month, everybody's trying to figure out what's happening in the fourth quarter and kind of lining up, bandwidth. They kind of allowed finally that they've been working on a sale of the project to a larger concern. The current status seems that they have a MIPA, a membership interest purchase agreement, signed, but it hasn't been closed yet. And I think, and the sense that I get is that the deal they have, and it's kind of a fairly standard approach, is that Forefront needs to sign the pilot and deliver it to them with their presumption that it's just portable and they could just take it over and go. Which kind of cuts against your need to have a sense of who your client is in the first instance. So as recently as last night, I asked them, what is their desired deliverable here? Do they want to close this forefront and allow their buyer to take over the pilot after the closing occurs, or would they like their buyer to close with the IDA? Either way, we can accommodate it, but it's the concept of just handing the pilot over to their buyers is something that typically isn't done. So we're waiting for them to get back to us. We can report back to the board once they've provided an amended application, some details and confirmation of who the buyer is and how that structure will work. I think we're in a position to be as helpful as we can be, as long as we understand really, what the end goal is here.
Yeah.
If they want to close this forefront, we can do that and then process a quick assignment. It doesn't seem very efficient. And the alternative would be to simply allow the board to endorse the takeover by the buyer and close with them directly. But that seems to cut against the deal that they've struck. So I guess we'll listen and have a clearer picture to bring to the board in the next meeting cycle in late November and early December.
Yes, it's the same buyer in the same situation as we're looking at with Lightstar that we talked to at our last board meeting, with the one in Rutland, where we're laying out the options. Okay, you can close now and then we do the reassignment or switch. So
The minor extra costs will just be a little legal costs. So
then, no cost to
they
us.
close on the pilot as company A, and then 5 days later, they close as company B.
Well, they turn around, they look for reassignment.
No, they reassign, they get reassigned.
So
the
they would have to
pilot
come back, they would have to come back to us for board action to.
I guess my only, it's not an IDA matter, it's a personal matter for me, but I hate the fact that you're monetizing public subsidies. It's all they're doing. They're taking something and then making money on it. And I guess that's why we get paid a fee, but whatever, we should rethink. These assignments should have maybe a period of time that cannot be done for some period of time after. Because to do it within 3 to 5 days, and I'm probably making it up, is contrived and preconceived, and I don't think correct. If it were 6 months, okay, fine. You found a buyer. You don't want to be in the generation business. You sell. In my opinion, that's just my opinion, and maybe people agree
Well,
with
two
me.
things I want to raise
Disagree.
today too, for you to bring to the board is one, it seems to make sense. There's going to be a little more work in administering these solar pilots because the whole thing we're going to have to go through each year, kind of analyzing the value. That maybe we do an annual administrative fee of $1,500 like we do with our bond things.
Well, there's that, and also I think last time it brought up where we can charge a reassignment fee. It can be quite small.
Well, and I was going to say
but-
that, and that could be another thing too. When they're reassigning after we've closed on a deal, maybe there's another fee there. Maybe if
Isn't that,
Go ahead.
don't they have to submit a new application to the new company, correct?
Yes.
yes.
So there's we're not waiving that second application fee, are we?
Shouldn't, because it's a new company.
Yeah, right. It's not like the same company amending, so the same company, it's a different.
If I sell you a house, you gotta pay whatever
Right.
fees, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no matter what the deal we have between us.
Yeah. Yes, I don't know.
Yeah, their perception, if you will, is that, well, geez, this LLC that is the project owner and entity, why should you care, IDA? Well, the reason we care is we accepted an application in the first instance with certifications from a parent regarding bankruptcy, criminal actions, environmental concerns, tax, all these certifications that you're by law required to ask within your application to vet the applicant.
Yeah, I think
Their
they're
perception-
stuck in the planning zoning where it goes with the land and, or the project, and we're going with the company.
That's right. That's right. And the concept of automatic portability, it kind of cuts against the core negotiation where for months and months, you have a standard process now, but the mantra that you're hearing as at IDA is, oh, we can't afford any more than that for our project and our operations and our construction. It's, well, that hour is not them. They're just packaging a deal and selling it. So we bump into this friction where I kind of pump the brakes and say, well, geez, who are you? Number one. The approval isn't necessarily, my joke is it's a Costco coupon or something to BJ's, but we kind of pump the brake and say, okay, we need to know for certain who we are closing with in the first instance if an approval's in hand. And the concept of closing, there's another assignment concept after that. If they want to transition the project ownership to another entity after you've signed the pilot and the rest of the documents, there's something that goes along with that as well. And in both instances, it should come to you as the board and have a firm understanding of who your client is and who you're going to have a 15-year relationship with. Who's the beneficiary of the assistance that you're providing. So that's kind of where it's not unique to you, certainly. But you are, I would say, based on the application updates and improvements that you've looked at over the last couple of months and are now rolling out, you're making it very clear where your position is, that we're here to help, but this approval is unique to you, and ultimately, if we close, that approval is unique to you as well. If you want to sign or sell your project, there's a way to do that, but it's not going to be news to us with a letter in the mail saying, "Hi, send the bill here." There's a new owner.
It'd be the same thing as, basically be the same thing as me going to the bank and getting a loan, and tomorrow giving John my loan and telling the bank John's now in charge of, or taking over my loan.
But you would charge him interest above what you're paying the bank. That's what's going on.
But
ultimately, you would be the one making
But the
money.
bank isn't gonna give John,
Exactly.
they're not gonna sign that to
I
John
know.
until they see John's background information, you know?
I agree, and also my bigger beef is that the company that developed it is monetizing the subsidy. They need a bow on everything to say, I've invested whatever, $750,000 and I got your pilot, and they get paid $1.5 million. I'm making numbers up clearly, but I'm sure I'm not far off from the style of transaction that's going on.
Sure. So
Why wouldn't this distributed solar project just do the whole thing themselves? Why are they buying these up after?
Certainty. They have angel investors, they got venture capitalists, they only want money guaranteed. They don't want to come in front of our
Pilots in
board.
place,
and-
they don't want to deal with.
They don't want to, like, all of these things are, I hate calling it a scam, but it's a tax scam. I mean, our government gives a lot of money to these types of things, and I don't have a better way of saying it. It's a scam. But it's a legal scam. And it's certainty. Their capitalists or venture capitalists are guaranteed a return once everything's all played out. So I don't know what you said is, go ahead, Paul.
So we're still waiting on information from this company before we move forward.
Well, we're
New application.
waiting for them to decide, one, if they want to proceed and close, PADS has already been approved. In other words, we close with the company Forefront. Or if they, which seems to be what their buyer would prefer. And then after we close the Forefront, the new buyers would come back to us, requesting approval for reassignment. Or,
Okay.
as Justin
Here-
said,
Here's my concern.
Yeah.
I think we should make since we haven't closed down the pilot yet, we need to ask them whether they have a DRB rate or a community or market transition credit or a community adder. Because when I run these projects through the new model, if they aren't receiving one of those two credits, we may be above full taxation with our pilot. Okay? Now, most of these companies are getting one of those two things, but we should be finding out, running it through the system to see whether or not we're above full taxation.
I think those metrics will go into effect probably starting in early 2023 with actual reassessment tax rates. I think it's hard for them to determine where the pilot benefit sits. Right now, the 5,500, plus land, by the way, which we need to circle up and probably have, I'd like to have an energy committee meeting and go through some important metrics on how the land tax is being handled on some closed deals. There's a concern there. But if you gross up the land tax plus the negotiated per megawatt amount with an escalator, you generally land somewhere around a 75% abatement on taxes currently, depending on how the assessor is dealing with things. And at the end of the day, if this new adder and the new formula regarding assessment goes into effect, that's going to be dramatically reduced. I totally agree with you. I just don't know to what degree. If it lands somewhere around, a 50% abatement or perhaps less, but the certainty, even if it's almost a shake and sixes from their perspective, they may want to stay in the pilot if it doesn't contain better certainty than text. Maybe that doesn't like. We'll see. I think large not going to see any more of the 1 megawatt deals. They're not even going to want to go get a 487 pilot because they could just stomach the wheeling. But stuff above, 2 and going up to wherever in terms of capacity, I think they're still going to want to come in and have the certainty.
Okay.
I don't know.
With no community ed or a 5 megawatt project in that area is going to be about 200,000, 250,000 assessment with land, okay?
Right. That's like a house.
So that's going to be $4,400 at full taxation, Justin.
Yeah. You may
Okay?
we may be grateful to see a wave of pilot terminations.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I talked to Oya, I talked to TJ, and he said theirs was around 2 cents, and that, just a 2 cent community credit per kilowatt hour makes a major difference in the output of this model. So I just think what do we got to lose by asking them if they're getting one of those two, just so we can take a look at it? At some point, we're gonna have to ask everyone for it.
Ira doesn't hurt. Dave Zembiak, if Justin's requesting an energy
Yeah.
meeting soon,
Yep.
you should bring up how we're gonna address these. And you brought up the bond is probably the best thing to do, like a reassignment fee, like we did with Samaritan. We charge them 0.5% or whatever the fee. So we should consider
Yeah.
something on these quick reassignments and maybe determine if we want to be descriptive on a period of time. Like something that happens within a couple days is not a coincidence.
Well, I think
Something that happens in 6 months could be like, hey, I've been really considering it. I don't want to be in the power generation business anymore, so I want to sell this. I'm willing to stomach some reasonable period of
Well, I was
time.
thinking two things. I was thinking, one, we charge a $1,500 annual administrative fee
Exactly.
moving forward.
Yeah, I was
with
gonna
all
get
these
to that
projects.
one too, yeah, like the
Which I think
bonds.
makes sense. Yeah, I mean, particularly with the solar projects, and then if they reassign within the year, I was just thinking we need to charge the $2,500 application fee or just a reduce the $2,000 flat fee for the reassignment application. Because
I just think that
we still have to
between
run
the committee
through
and the board, we can
Right.
debate something,
Yeah.
but these reassignments in too quick of order, I don't know, they just don't smell and taste right. They hit me wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry to be so just pleasant.
No, you're not alone in your frustration. That's for sure. Being on the front of it in, probably 10 counties, you're certainly not alone. And it just generally, the way the industry works, we talked about it. It's easy to be somewhat critical and with hindsight, but just the way it works is generally there's a whole industry of prospecting where there's going concerns that their business plan is simply to bundle attributes, get the site plan, get the pilot, get all the general permits in place, including you, and then simply sell that up to larger concerns that have an appetite for either tax credit, equity, for their own account or for syndication. Those concerns that have the appetite to bundle hundreds, if not thousands of projects, they're just simply not built to have staff or a running crew to go out and do the bundling. They don't want to get into that risk. They don't want to be the close contact in front of with local government. And quite frankly, if they did come to as a large GE-led concern that is now taking over the game farm project, what do you think the reception would be for them sitting in front of you saying they need a tax break? You have the smaller concerns saying, well, we're operating on a needle's tip here in terms of profit margin. We can't afford this tax amount. We can't afford to spend any more on construction. It's kind of true if they were actually doing it. But the bundling is the way the industry kind of works. All of these, if you look at 1,000 projects across New York State, there may end up being about 5 owners after it's all said and done. Right now, you've got hundreds and different degrees of development along their timeline and their pipeline. Those that close may still be with the smaller concerns, but they're all being packaged, sent up, and put into someone else's bundle. They may all end up being split by load zones, or there may be a few concerns per load zone, somewhat like your utilities. It's going to be utility scale. There's going to be large concerns that have within your load zone 30 community projects. It's just kind of the way the forecast looks to me. And what we're dealing with now is the friction at the front end of that, where they're all changing hands and finding their way up to the larger parents. So
Okay.
I guess the trick now, and I think you're already doing it, is making sure that your applicants and your clients are well aware and on notice that these aren't portable. You're going to have a touch every time these things change hands. And to the extent that approval process is somewhat, I don't know about rubber stamp, but it's somewhat perfunctory, at least it's there in front of you and you know who you're dealing with. And you see these things move each time. There's a lot of wind projects that we've dealt with historically, and they're kind of legacy projects that there's a couple in neighboring counties near you that they get letters, almost every year saying, "Hi, please send the pilot bill here now," because they've changed hands. Just the institutional controls weren't put in the documents to allow that snapshot and that tacit approval. They're just changing hands, and the IDA doesn't know who their client is on a day-to-day, but
Okay.
the thing that we're trying to do now is keep that optics and that transparency in place, so you know who the heck you're dealing with.
Dave,
There's a little it's frustrating, but there's a little like, oh my gosh, they're clutching their pearls. How could you ask this question? But I'm like, listen, it's the application is coming from somebody.
Justin, has any of the counties chosen not to support the projects?
Say again?
Have any other counties chosen not to support the project because of this reason, or?
Oh, for purposes of assignments?
Yeah.
No, we haven't had anybody spike one. There was one in a county in the southern tier. I think I've talked to Dave about this one, where we closed an escrow under the notion that they needed a week to make the wires to the IDA. And a week later, the wires hit and we closed, only to find out that they sold the project in that week, and now we had a new customer. And so it's an uncurable event of default the way the documents are drafted. So there was a couple of months of weirdness that ultimately got them the pilot transitioned over, but there was a lot of goodwill lost, I would say. We're seeing in other counties where we're careful to draft the documents to create that mechanism where if there's an assignment of more than 50% control of the company, that they would have to come back to the IDA. And what happened in a couple instances was they bundled the deal such that the company had a parent that was sold. So they dodged around the immediate snapshot. So that's led to a bit of a reaction on our side and in a couple other places where you define the assignment mechanism to be not only change of control of the actual company one step above, but all the way up to the ultimate taxpayer. Don't care. You could do 50 layers to try to bury who the ultimate beneficial owner is, whether it's a tax credit equity firm or a fund, or if it's an actual taxpayer. We got to know. So it's ever evolving, and it's almost kind of like trying to hit a moving target sometimes. But we're the documents that I'm deploying now on your active projects, I'm using that ultimate taxpayer definition, so there isn't something happening 3 steps above that you don't know about.
It certainly puts a lot of merit on the decommissioning part of the project, because if they're selling them 2 or 3 times, the new company has to buy into that, whatever the decommissioning agreement is.
Yeah.
Officially signed.
All of the project
And the bonds are
covenants and
written
everything.
for the company that owns the project, so it should continue to attach no matter who is the ultimate owner of the company. And that the things that we're kind of concerned about, we're focused on right now, you know, if you can imagine all the host community agreements out there, the 487 pilots that don't have any control over assignment. Good Lord, who's that town clerk sending a bill to? I don't know. That's the frustration, I think, and on some levels where you just don't know who to send a piece of mail to. Because it, you know, might be New York, Washington, London, DC, who the heck knows? We try to make sure that.
It'll be in
there's
Delaware,
a-
they're all incorporated in Delaware.
US Guam.
Yeah.
Dave Zumbiak, can we set a goal? It may not be attainable, but convene an energy meeting and try to get something in front of the board for
Well,
the December.
so two things, we'll do an energy committee, because as Justin was saying, that's to kind of talk about how we deal, because of the way some of our other pilots are structured, dealing with how we deal with the fact that we're doing a pilot on the solar project, but, you know, collecting full value on, and likely an increased value on the underlying land. So that's, but I think I'd like to go directly to the board with this next meeting, at least it's simple enough. The $1,500 annual fee, and
Sure.
then maybe, we can discuss the amount, maybe a $2,000 flat fee.
But
or
whatever
up or
those
down.
are, let's try to get
Yeah.
them in front
Yeah.
of probably the December meeting, unless you think November is still attainable.
Well, since, with the way these projects are going along and we're closing on,
Well, my concern is January, February are probably gonna be active for people trying to build in 2022.
right. But I'm saying for the November board meeting coming up next week, I think the issue of fee is just a simple question.
Okay, if that can be put
Yeah.
on the November, I didn't know if
But-
you needed to go
yeah.
through
No, we-
energy at all.
No, I can go right here. I mean,
I think just, I mean, the
Yeah.
full board can debate it just
Yeah.
as
So I'll
well.
send a note, I'll heads up. But I think, but we will get an energy committee meeting set up as soon as we can to discuss this other issue, so.
Okay, thanks. Anything else under other unfinished business that we need to address today?
I don't think so.
Motion to adjourn.
Justin, are you free to talk after this, or should you talk later today?
I'm good till about 9 o'clock, then I gotta dip out to another meeting. So if you want to get the dust settled there and hit the voice room or whatever,
Yeah.
give me a howl.
Or- I'll call your cell?
Yeah,
Okay,
Trevor
right.
Sal, you're
Okay,
at the house.
right, sounds good.
Second, John?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, meeting stands adjourned. Thanks, everyone, be safe.
Stay well, guys.
Good.
Recording stopped.
Enjoy our.
I've got to look at that new model myself for the evaluation.
Yeah, it makes